public knowledge at that time that he was under federal investigation, and who was sharing information with me. Now, I heard recently from someone that I was seeking advice from him. Let me tell you something. I don't need to get advice on how to question anybody from any individual. I have been a lawyer for 30 years. I have been a narcotics prosecutor in New York City. I have had the honor of being a political appointee at the Justice Department after September 11th as a Republican appointee in the Bush administration. I know how to question individuals. I know how to seek information. I have sought information from confidential informants, from murderers, from other individuals, because I want the truth, not because I need them to tell me what to say. And if you look at the transcript, you will see that I questioned Michael Cohen for 5 minutes. The Washington Post only shows you 30 seconds and takes from it one individual's name that I got from, Jeffrey Epstein, and didn't know who the individual was, and put that individual with a host of other individuals that I felt the committee should subpoena. They've never been subpoenaed. They've never been questioned. Because at the end of the day, I know that in the Trump administration and with my colleagues over there, it's not about sexual assault. It's not about support of victims. It's about money. It is about money. I have consistently stood against sexual violence and the exploitation of women and children in previous careers as well as here in this body. We all know that Jeffrey Epstein's actions were absolutely reprehensible. As a constituent, as an individual who gave donations to me, when I learned of the extent of his actions after his investigation, I gave that money to women's organizations in my community. Not back to him, but to women in the community who needed that support. That's what I think should have been done, and that's what I did. They've taken a text exchange which shows no participation, no assistance, no involvement in any illegal activity, and weaponized it for political theater, because that's what this is. This has been reviewed by federal courts. Any charges, victims who initially had a case against me dismissed it on their own without prejudice. You don't want to talk about what is really happening here. Your attacks on working families, your protection of powerful predators and corporate criminals. You want to talk about texting felons. How often do you text President Donald J. Trump? That's the individual we should be concerned about. And let me tell you this. I am not going to support the wealthy and connected who continue to exploit workers and evade taxes, powerful figures with credible allegations who face no consequences, and corporate interests profiting from human suffering while families struggle. And let me tell the people of the Virgin Islands.
Gentleman will state his point of order.
The point of order is you may not call the President of the United States a felon. That is a violation.
Point of order is under consideration, and we're not going to lose order here either, so please.
May I continue? May I continue, Mr.
Members
Speaker?
are, however, reminded to refrain, as mentioned a little while ago, from making personality commentary towards the President. The point of order is not timely, so the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is happening here? I feel sorry for my colleagues. I feel sorry for this body. I see members coming and speaking against me who I've never even had a conversation with. You don't know me. You don't know the work that I've done. You don't know the support that I've given to families, to individuals, to support people. I worked a full-time job with children under the age of 5 going to law school at night, do you think I would risk my law degree for any individual? Never mind a reprehensible individual by Jeffrey Epstein, I would not. But what I'm about is the truth. And let me tell the people of the Virgin Islands, this attempt at intimidation will pass. We in the Virgin Islands do not back down from a fight. That is how we won our freedom, and that is how we will continue to grow our equality. And if you censure me, take away a committee, I will still do the work, because I am here to support people and to support this great Constitution, which I have sworn numerous times to uphold.
We reserve, and I thank the lady.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, before I recognize Mr. Clyde, let me just say, Ms. Plaskett, I don't know you. My overall impression of you has been good. But, and you give these words about protecting families and children. Where was that demonstrated when you took money from a convicted pedophile that had served time? Where was that? The words are beyond believability. And I think you're a nice person, but you missed the boat when you took money. I've got the mic now. You lost your I don't know the word to describe it, but what you did, you deserve to come off the committees. And let me remind you, we want this to go to the Ethics Commission. And to those listening, the Ethics Commission is 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. Let them find it. But in the meantime, you do not deserve to serve on a committee with national clearance. And I would like now.
Will be reminded again to direct their commentary to the chair.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize my good friend from Georgia, Mr. Andrew Clyde.
How much time is the gentleman recognize? Shall I recognize him?
How much time is left?
You have 11 and a half minutes remaining.
5 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. My good friend, Mr. Norman from South Carolina. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this resolution censuring and condemning Delegate Stacey Plaskett of the U.S. Virgin Islands for inappropriate coordination with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during a congressional hearing, and removing Delegate Plaskett from the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and referring her to the Ethics Committee for further investigation. After 4 years of silence on this matter, not a peep during the entire Biden administration, let me repeat that, after 4 years of silence on this matter about Jeffrey Epstein, House Democrats are now demanding transparency and accountability surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and his associates. While their fake outrage is clearly just another disgusting attempt to smear President Trump, House Republicans are taking this matter seriously and are working toward delivering the much-needed transparency and accountability that the American people deserve. This resolution is accountability, page 1. During the House Oversight Committee's ongoing investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, emails obtained by a congressional subpoena, that's right, it was the congressional subpoena by the House Oversight Committee, not the discharge petition that just got voted on, but this was the Oversight Committee's congressional subpoena, has brought to light that in 2019, Delegate Stacey Plaskett coordinated her line of questioning with Jeffrey Epstein in real time over text messages during an Oversight Committee hearing featuring testimony from Michael Cohen. Now, who is Michael Cohen? Michael Cohen was the disgraced former attorney of President Donald Trump. She was asking input from Jeffrey Epstein on how to best question Cohen, and Cohen was himself at that time a convicted felon from 2018. So now that Republicans are exposing Democrat ties to Jeffrey Epstein and his vile crimes, the other side of the aisle has flipped. They apparently no longer want transparency or accountability. Why? Because they don't want the truth. They want to weaponize a serious matter into a distraction, all in an attempt to take down President Trump and to hurt his administration and what he's doing to make America great again. The actions taken by Delegate Plaskett reflect poorly on the House, and this body needs to hold her accountable. I urge all of my colleagues to vote to adopt this resolution to show the American people that those who colluded with Mr. Epstein, including members of the House, will be held accountable, and this resolution is the beginning of that. I thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields.
To the chair.
Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from South Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Proud to yield 1 minute to the distinguished Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries.
The Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the distinguished gentleman, my good friend from the great state of Maryland, the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, for yielding. I rise today in strong opposition. This resolution, this effort to censure Delegate Plaskett, to rip away her membership on the Intel Committee, is nothing more than a political stunt by a desperate, failed candidate for governor, trying to pander to the people back in South Carolina. Nothing more than that. You want to make the statement about who's brought disgrace to the House? The actions of this House Republican majority have brought disgrace to the House of Representatives from day one of this presidency. The reality is, if you want to talk about fealty to the Constitution and things of that nature, the House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. You don't seem to understand that. You functioned from the very beginning of your so-called majority, Mr. Speaker, not as a check and balance on an out-of-control administration, but as a reckless rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda, and you are failing the American people. You failed to keep your core promise. Your core promise to the American people was that you were going to lower costs on day one. Costs haven't gone down here in the United States of America. Costs have gone up. The Trump economy is a complete and total failure. It's a disaster. The American people are hurting. And so every week, you come to the House floor now that you've returned from your 7-week taxpayer-funded vacation and come up with another stunt to try to distract the American people. Or perhaps you were ordered by your puppet master, Donald Trump, who wants to distract the American people today because his effort to suppress the Jeffrey Epstein files has failed spectacularly. We believe in transparency. We believe in accountability. We believe in due process. That's the opposite of what is happening on the floor today. And let me be very clear about Stacey Plaskett. She's a woman of great intelligence and a woman of great integrity. And she deserves better than what she's receiving from House Republican extremists. She deserves the opportunity to be heard. She deserves due process. She deserves the ability to make her case, not to be prosecuted by petty foggers, playing lawyer on the floor of the House of Representatives. Google that if you don't know what it means. The so-called Freedom Caucus want to lecture us about proceeding at this moment. The actions that you continue to engage in will have consequences. Consequences today, consequences tomorrow, consequences next week, consequences next year, and certainly consequences when the American people throw this House Republican majority out in the aftermath of the election next November. Be very careful about the extreme actions that you continue to engage in. Now, it's extraordinary to me, week after week, censure after censure, and I wonder, is it just coincidence that the last 3 censures we've had on the House floor happen to involve, first, you tried to censure LaMonica MacGyver. And then, Mr. Speaker, Republicans tried to censure Ilhan Omar. And now we're on the floor, and you're trying to censure Stacey Plaskett. What is it exactly that those 3 individuals have in common? House Republicans are going to have to answer for the things, the extreme things that you continue to do. And the American people know this is a phony majority. It's a fake majority. It's not a real majority. Republicans aren't doing anything to make life better for the American people. And that's why we're on the floor right now. There's nothing that House Republicans can do to disgrace Stacey Plaskett because House Republicans continue to disgrace themselves. And so whatever happens later on this evening, the American people will hear from Delegate Plaskett beyond this, making her case. The people of the Virgin Islands, I'm confident, will continue to stand behind her. And we will never be lectured on issues related to accountability and transparency and principle and ethics from this group of extreme House Republicans who continue to visit a national nightmare on the American people, bending the knee to a wannabe king, doing real harm in real time, and at the end of the day, your time is coming as well. I yield back.
Chairman yields.
Hey, how much time do we have, Mr. Speaker?
Gentleman has 4.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes. All members are again reminded, including Minority Leader, to direct your comments to the chair. All members are again instructed, including Minority Leader, to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the President. The gentleman from Maryland seeks recognition.
Yeah, no, we'll reserve.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Speaker, I find it interesting that the Minority Leader mentioned that, we got not really a majority. I will tell you, 77 million people are a majority. They rendered the consequences to elect the president that has revived this country from a disaster 4 years under the Biden administration. Let's go back under a little bit of history here about the hearing. The messages show that Plaskett texted Epstein before the hearings that started that day at 7:55. She texted him, the sex offender, the predator on the children she says she protects. They had comments like she told Ms. Plaskett talk about his grades. She mentioned that she had a great-looking outfit. This is from Mr. Epstein. In 10:40, she broadcast a feed cut to Ms. Plaskett showing her moving her mouth as if she was chewing something. And Ms. Plaskett mentioned that she had multiple texts. Well, according to the records, and I don't know how many of her texts came from those convicted of felonies, but on at 2:25, Epstein sent 2:25 minutes before Plaskett began questioning Cohen at 2:28. Epstein messaged back, "Good work," at 2:34, 1 minute after Plaskett finished her question to Cohen. So the whole 5 minutes was pretty much conducted under the direction of a convicted pedophile. And this dialogue, Ms. Plaskett was reached by phone Thursday. Plaskett declined to answer questions about the text messages and directed all inquiries to congressional staff. Plaskett's chief of staff said Thursday she was not in a position to confirm or not whether the Congresswoman was texting with Mr. Epstein at the hearing. She did not respond to follow-up questions. Bottom line, these are facts. These are text messages. This wasn't smoke and mirrors. So it's interesting that they're taking that tact. But, Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have left?
Gentleman has 6.5 minutes remaining.
I reserve.
Gentleman from South Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
I'm yielding 1 minute to the representative from New York, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus, the conscience of the Congress, in strong opposition to this resolution. This resolution is a blatantly partisan, shameless attack. As we sit here today, Donald Trump is still the single person in this country with the authority and the ability to deliver justice to survivors and truth to the American people by just releasing the files. So instead of answering why Donald Trump chooses every single day not to release the Epstein files, they're pointing fingers at this side of the aisle. Mr. Speaker, unlike the president, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett has committed no crime, violated no rule, and broken no promises. There has been no investigation, no due process, no inquiry into whether the Congresswoman had any connection whatsoever to Epstein's despicable and disgusting criminal conduct. This resolution would have us remove a capable and hardworking member of one of the most serious working committees in this body on the basis of a conversation from more than 6 years ago, which broke no rules, and has no connection to any criminal activity. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this partisan resolution, this sham, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
We reserve.
Gentleman from Maryland reserved. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from South Carolina reserves.
And we're prepared to close.
It's closed.
Yes,
Gentleman.
I'm prepared to close.
All right. Gentleman from South Carolina is prepared to close. Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I want to start by addressing the young people who appear to be in the audience this evening, because I'm afraid some of my arguments are lost on some of our colleagues across the aisle suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. It seems to have completely warped their minds today, and they're not thinking clearly about the Constitution or about the rule of law. But the young people here will recognize, if they read this resolution, immediately what's wrong with it, because it's replete with phrases like this, that this one incident that they're referring to raises serious questions about the judgment and the integrity and the fitness to serve. Well, I think that's absurd, but in any event, if you think it raises serious questions, presumably you would want the answers to those questions. But you don't get answers by rushing to judgment and turning the whole process upside down. This resolution starts by saying we censure her, we remove her from committee, and the very next component of it says we direct the Committee on Ethics to conduct an investigation. That is the opposite of due process, and I hope at least future generations will understand that's not how we hold people accountable, whether it's under criminal law, under civil law, or under an ethics process, which they purport to want to be launching here. Again, go back to the George Santos standard. The reason we voted against just hanging him out to dry and censoring him and expelling him is because the process hadn't happened yet. And Democrats and Republicans together did it, but they're thinking in solely partisan terms. Even Matt Gaetz, accused of having sex with a 17-year-old, was never censured by the House of Representatives. Even with Speaker McCarthy and others condemning him for what he did, we did not censure him. Think about what you're doing to the precedents of this body by trying to attack Ms. Plaskett. And let me just close with a personal thought. I wasn't going to bring it up because I didn't want to embarrass her, but she was one of the 3 finest students I ever had in constitutional law. She was a straight A student in the early 1990s. She's a straight A student in the 21st century. I'm proud not only that she was my student, but that she's my friend and that she's my colleague, and you don't disgrace us in any way. You go to work every day for the people of Virgin Islands, and we're proud of you. With that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I find it interesting that the president is occupying the minds of my good friend on the left rent-free. And it's interesting they bring him up every time, and keep doing it. Keep doing it. This president's got a record that is second to none. And I hope our listeners in the audience can distinguish between just words and babbling on when they reject the facts of what's been presented. Texts don't lie. And they can offer all the excuses. And I do think Ms. Plaskett is a nice lady. She made a mistake here, a bad mistake. She took advice from a convicted pedophile that that is indefensible in this discussion here today. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to my colleagues defend the indefensible. I've heard everything from this is old news to this is just politics. But not a single person has disputed the key fact. Written records in Epstein's own estate documents show Delegate Plaskett sought his input for an official hearing. This is the issue. That alone. Everything else is just noise. This chamber cannot overlook that a sitting member of Congress coordinated with a convicted sex offender to prepare questions for an official proceeding. Imagine telling the American people that that's acceptable. Imagine explaining to parents all across this country that Congress sees no problem with relying on the counsel of a predator of our innocent children. Some of my colleagues want to blur the edges, soften the facts, or bury this under procedural fog, noise as I call it. But sunlight is the best disinfectant, and accountability is not optional. This resolution is not excessive at all. It is appropriate. It is measured. It is necessary at this time. The question before us is very simple. Do we uphold a minimal standard for ethical conduct, or do we just shrug and say, well, maybe next time? Mr. Speaker, the public deserves better. The House deserves better. The American people deserve better. I urge adoption of this resolution, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the resolution. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No! In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Yeah. Welcome to procedural democracy.
For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
I request a recorded vote, and I challenge the Speaker's interpretation of the voice vote.
Does the gentleman ask for the yeas and nays?
I ask for the ayes and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Okay. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 879, I call up H.J. Res. 130 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
House Joint Resolution 130, Joint Resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to Buffalo Field Office Record of Decision and Approved Resource Management Plan Amendment.
Pursuant to House Resolution 879, the joint resolution is considered read. The joint resolution shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources or their respective designees. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westman, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Huffman, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westman.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.J. Res. 130.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of H.J. Res. 130, which would repeal the Bureau of Land Management's Misguided Resource Management Plan, or RMP, amendment for the Buffalo Field Office in Wyoming, which was finalized in the twilight hours of the Biden-Harris administration. Wyoming's Powder River Basin currently supplies 40% of the nation's coal. The RMP amendment in question effectively halted future federal coal leasing across a region in Wyoming larger than New Jersey and located in the heart of America's coal country. Without repeal, the RMP amendment will end coal production in the region entirely by 2041 and close 12 active mines. The RMP amendment is a death blow to America's energy security, Wyoming's workers, and the economic backbone of the state itself. It is projected that U.S. electricity demand will grow by as much as 128 gigawatts through 2029, and global energy demand is expected to double by 2050. Coal is reliable, affordable, and essential to meet the increasing power demands of the AI revolution and advanced manufacturing. The RMP amendment locked up an astonishing 48 billion short tons of coal. That's enough to meet U.S. coal demand for the next 116 years. 92% of Wyoming's coal is exported to other states, helping keep the lights on and utility prices affordable in distant places as far as Texas, Illinois, and my home state of Arkansas. Nationwide, residential electricity prices have increased by 13% since 2022, and overturning misguided policies like this RMP amendment will help make the cost of living more affordable for families across America. It's time to unleash our domestic resources to put this money back into the pockets of American families by repealing the Biden administration's anti-American energy policies. What's more, instead of working with the state, the Biden administration blatantly ignored local opposition at every stage of this process and rammed this RMP amendment through to appease environmental extremists. The Biden administration provided a limited opportunity for public comment or engagement on this RMP amendment. Wyoming's governor, unified congressional delegation, locally elected officials, tribes, and local communities all expressed strong opposition to this plan amendment. The previous administration ignored them all. According to local representatives, it is suspect and disturbing that such a dramatic change to the current land use plan would solicit such little engagement during the public comment period. Campbell and Johnson County commissioners who represent the local communities affected by this plan stated that whatever information they provided to the BLM in this process was, quote, ignored by the federal agency. Overturning the RMP amendment takes power from bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., and returns it to the people of Wyoming. The BLM also ignored tribal input in developing this RMP amendment. The Navajo Transitional Energy Company, which is wholly owned by the Navajo Nation, provided detailed comments opposing this amendment that were all dismissed by the BLM. In a letter they submitted to the agency, they stated, quote, BLM consistently downplayed the reasonably foreseeable negative impacts of the mine's closures on the surrounding social justice communities, and it did not even consider the jobs lost in the downstream communities that rely on the Powder River Basin coal, end quote. Energy security is national security, and Wyoming's energy industry remains indispensable to ensuring America stays energy dominant. Wyoming's Powder River Basin, with its low-sulfur coal, produces the world's cleanest burning coal. We should be focused on exporting this abundant natural resource to our allies abroad, not burying this baseload power under layers of bureaucracy. By passing this CRA today, we're advancing President Trump's executive orders on unleashing American energy and reinvigorating America's coal industry. We're also restoring hundreds of millions of dollars in future revenue for Wyoming's K-12 public education system and protecting more than 4,000 high-paying jobs in rural Wyoming. In conjunction with the pro-energy policies included in the Working Families Tax Cut Law, this CRA also has the potential to generate more than $260 million for the federal Treasury. This CRA helps the U.S. remain energy dominant and will lower prices for families, strengthen our economy, and boost real wages for hardworking men and women. I urge my colleagues to stand with Wyoming, stand with American workers, and stand for energy security by supporting this resolution. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me wish Chairman Westerman a happy birthday. I do wish him a happy birthday, but even that goodwill does not change the fact that this is bad legislation. And so, unfortunately, Bruce, I'm going to have to rise in opposition to the bill while wishing you a happy birthday. We are, Mr. Speaker, all grateful that the Republican shutdown is finally over, but millions of Americans are still on the cusp of losing health care. They are struggling to put food on the table. And after their 7-week paid vacation, I can't imagine anything more disconnected than for House Republicans to come back here and make their first priority not helping working families to make ends meet, but jamming through more favors for their billionaire buddies. These 3 Congressional Review Act, or CRA, resolutions treat America's public lands like they are just lines on a balance sheet. They silence public opinion. They ignore the fires and storms that are made worse by climate change, all of it to make fossil fuel extraction the #1 priority going forward for how we manage our public lands. Wildfire defense, public safety, recreation, conservation, all of these take a back seat now to maximizing corporate profits, even in our most fragile landscapes like America's Arctic. Americans want clean air, clean water, accessible public lands, not handouts to polluters. Overturning balanced, forward-looking BLM plans in Wyoming and Alaska is a colossal mistake. Across the federal land management agencies, plans like these are the foundation for responsible, sustainable management of our public lands. RMPs are the product of extensive public input, rigorous scientific reviews, meaningful tribal consultation, and balancing the activities on our public lands, from energy development to recreation, is what these plans do. They reflect the needs of communities, industries, ecosystems, and they outline a clear vision for the stewardship of millions of acres of public lands. Let's look at the Buffalo Field Office RMP targeted by this particular resolution. It was developed after a court found that the previous plan failed to address the public health and climate impacts of unfettered coal mining in the region. Importantly, the current RMP was also developed after robust tribal consultation and public input. So we're just going to throw that all away? I strongly oppose HRES 130, which would repeal the current balanced RMP for BLM's Buffalo Field Office in order to prop up the coal industry in Wyoming's Powder River Valley. The plan targeted by this resolution ended new coal leasing in the region because of its harm to the climate and public health and because of decreasing demand for coal. At the same time, the plan allowed existing mines to continue to operate through the end of their current leases. Rescinding this plan means locking us into unnecessary emissions and energy costs at a time when the planet and the American people cannot afford it, and it also puts us on a treadmill of litigation and uncertainty, sending us back, theoretically, to a plan that was already adjudicated to be illegal, or maybe waiting for a new plan to come forward from the Trump administration, and I guess hoping that a future court will decide that it's not substantially similar to the ones that have been thrown out with your CRA. This is something that my friends across the aisle simply haven't thought through. There is so much chaos and uncertainty when the sledgehammer of the CRA is used in this reckless manner. Now, House Republicans already passed and the administration implemented unprecedented giveaways to the coal industry through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, including slashing the royalty rates for coal from 12% to 7.5%, and opening more than 13 million acres of public lands for coal leasing. But even with these handouts, it's not enough to reverse decades of market contraction in the coal industry. The coal industry is dying. What Republicans don't mention is that BLM's coal lease sales this year have either failed to reach market value, been indefinitely canceled, or received little to no bids. Rather than simply redoing this RMP through the well-established public process, which the Trump administration is already doing, House Republicans want to overturn it using the CRA, again, an extremely blunt instrument that will throw us into great uncertainty and litigation for sure. This choice would lock out the perspectives from previous tribal and public engagement and ban the agency from ever again issuing a substantially similar RMP, leaving land policy frozen in time, really more like frozen in some kind of a limbo. Incredible uncertainty and chaos. House Republicans want to permanently enshrine fossil fuel extraction as the top priority for millions of acres of public land across the country, no matter the cost. And they're picking winners and losers here, blocking affordable renewable energy projects, sacrificing our public lands in the process. I urge my colleagues to reject these reckless resolutions that would upend millions of acres of public land management and reject this entire familiar playbook from congressional Republicans, trying to deepen our dependence on dirty fossil fuels that pollute our air, contaminate our water, and harm the public health, while doing everything possible to slow, stop, or sabotage the development of affordable, renewable energy. Our constituents deserve a lot better than this. We deserve clean, affordable, and reliable energy. We deserve good-paying jobs and affordable health care. And we shouldn't sacrifice America's health, environment, and livelihoods in order to do it. This legislation and my friends across the aisle are on the wrong side of history, trying to prop up the dying coal industry. They're on the wrong side of public land management, and they're on the wrong side of the American people's pocketbooks as they face rising electricity costs. That's why I oppose this resolution and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman for Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I sincerely appreciate the birthday wishes from my friend across the aisle. That means a lot to me. If I had a birthday wish of my own, it would be to make energy more affordable for the American people, to help the good folks of Wyoming to have a livelihood, and to not only keep prices down, but keep good-paying jobs across this country that are in the energy industry. We know that we need more energy going forward. We need more electrons on the grid. We need a larger grid, and we need to all work together to do those things. But if this resource management plan amendment by the previous administration was balanced, I would hate to see a heavy-handed resource management plan amendment by the previous administration, because this took a sledgehammer to an established industry in the state of Wyoming. And I'm sure my distinguished colleague from the great state of Wyoming, Representative Hageman, who is the lead sponsor of this legislation, will go into detail what this would mean to Wyoming if this plan amendment stays in place. And I yield her 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of my legislation, House Joint Resolution 130, which utilizes the Congressional Disapproval Procedure under the Congressional Review Act, or CRA, to restore coal leasing in Wyoming's Powder River Basin. Many on the East Coast of America might be surprised to learn that the federal government owns massive amounts of the western states. In Wyoming, the federal government owns about half of our surface estate and 60% of the subsurface estate, or our minerals. In Northeast Wyoming, the Bureau of Land Management's Buffalo Field Office owns and manages over 788,000 acres of land and 4.7 million acres of our mineral estate. Notably, this land encompasses Wyoming's share of the Powder River Basin, North America's largest coal deposit, responsible for the production of 40% of our nation's coal. Wyoming is the largest coal producer in the nation. We, in other words, are responsible for ensuring that you can turn on your lights and heat your home. The BLM manages its public lands pursuant to the Federal Land Policy Management Act, which is implemented pursuant to what we refer to as Resource Management Plans, or RMPs. These RMPs are designed to maximize resource values for the public. The BLM is required to comply with a multiple-use mandate, ensuring that these combination of uses meet current and future needs of the American people. In its waning days, the Biden administration issued an RMP amendment for the Buffalo Field Office, which pursued the no new leasing alternative, pulling 481,000 acres of America's largest coal reserves and resources offline, making 48 billion short tons of coal unavailable and ending leasing in the Powder River Basin. Such a decision cannot be considered a legitimate or legal RMP pursuant to FLPMA, and neither does it align with Congress's multiple-use mandate. The Biden RMP is instead very clearly a mineral withdrawal enacted by climate activists in direct violation of the law. The Biden administration's decision to terminate mining in Wyoming's PRB is not only irresponsible and harmful, but downright illegal, a mechanism used by the governing elite to inflict harm on every single citizen of this great country to further climate change lunacy. If this RMPA is allowed to continue, it would risk 4,122 jobs in rural Wyoming, $1.9 billion in labor output through 2048, and millions of dollars in state revenue used to fund public K-12 education. This seemingly localized decision has national repercussions as well. In 2024, Wyoming produced 191 million tons of coal, 171 million tons of which was shipped to 26 different states for producing electricity. At these rates, Wyoming produces about 40% of the nation's coal and about 80% of all federal coal production. With coal generating as much as 23% of America's electricity at any given time, Wyoming coal supplies as much as 9.2% of the electricity produced in this country. Watching the arguments in the Rules Committee last night and on the floor today, it is clear that affordability is the word of the day for my colleagues across the aisle. If utility bills for Americans is something they genuinely care about, then I encourage them to vote for H.J. Res. 130 and to not turn off the Powder River Basin coal, which accounts for so much of American energy and could generate even more if Washington, D.C. had not waged a war on coal for the last 3 decades. In short, it is policies such as no new coal leasing contained in this Buffalo RMP that reduces affordability, which my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will be supporting if they continue to oppose H.J. Res. 130. This vote today is a vote to shore up the grid, which will have positive impacts on the utility bills of Americans. When combined with what this majority did for energy development in the One Big Beautiful Bill, we are shoring up centuries of energy production. We cannot survive in this country without Wyoming coal, the majority of which is produced in the Powder River Basin. Demand for Wyoming coal is only increasing, both here and abroad. If you turn out the lights on one of Wyoming's most important industries, you will also be turning out the lights on America. The Biden administration knew this and pursued this harmful policy anyway, and they did so in violation of the law. On September 18, 2025, the Government Accountability Office determined that the Buffalo RMP was a rule subject to the CRA on the grounds that it is an agency statement, is of future effect, and it implements, interprets, or prescribes law and policy. This decision is in line with previous GAO decisions on similar land management plans and RMPs, several of which this body has passed in the 119th Congress. A vote today for HJ Res 130 has many positive implications. First, it would overturn this harmful plan and revert to the 2015 RMP, thereby protecting access to 481,000 acres for coal leasing. Second, it would provide certainty to countless Wyomingites who rely on our good, clean coal for jobs and for revenue that funds the schools that our children attend. Third, it is a vote for the millions of Americans who continue to rely on Wyoming coal and who always will. Fourth, it's a win for Congress, reminding the agencies that we are the primary policymaking branch of government and that we will hold the agencies responsible for bad, unlawful regulations. I urge all of my colleagues to vote in favor of HJ Res 130, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentleman from California, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It occurs to me that as we're having this debate, pretty much the rest of the world is in Brazil right now for the climate conference. Of course, the Trump administration has disgracefully pulled the United States out of the Paris Agreement once again, so we have no federal delegation at all. But as the rest of the world convenes to accept the reality of the climate crisis and to accept the related reality of coal being the biggest contributor to carbon pollution, and the entire world is talking about how to phase down our dependence on coal pollution and fossil fuel pollution, we are here in this alternate reality of the Republican majority, where my colleague from Wyoming calls it climate lunacy. It's a sad, sad testament to, frankly, the disgraceful leadership of this Republican majority that propping up the coal industry with discounted royalties and massive subsidies and millions of acres of land giveaways, and now this misuse of the Congressional Review Act is the official policy of the Republican majority. It's just almost unthinkable, and yet that's where we are. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Vasquez.
Is recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, first, coming from New Mexico, let me tell you that I have gone through the RMP process firsthand in my own Las Cruces district, the Tri-County RMP. And those are long and painful processes. They take a lot of public input, a lot of painful meetings. Those plans are developed with the input from residents from all sides of the aisle that represent different parts of what is our public lands and that mandate to have multiple use lands. They are not meant just for one industry. They are meant for everybody that uses those public lands. And when I served on the U.S. Federal Committee to advise the Forest Service, and we got all of these stakeholders together to implement the 2012 planning rule, it was the same deal. We did it deliberately. We did it with all stakeholders at the table. And so these RMPs are actually developed with public input from every community, not from one single stakeholder group. And that is the painful process that it takes to update these plans, many of them which haven't been updated since the 1980s. Now, it's important that we take into account the time, the effort of not just the agency staff and those folks who show up to those hard meetings and hear the public out, but the public who comes out in my district, sometimes driving 30, 40, 50 miles just to attend one of those meetings so that they can eventually get to an RMP knowing that that will be the law of the land. And so today I rise in opposition to all of the CRAs. But in particular, I want to talk about one very special place. In 2017, when the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge's coastal plain was first officially opened to drilling, supporters promised that the sale would raise significant revenue. Instead, only 3 bidders emerged, and the first mandated lease sale brought in less than 1% of the $2.2 billion that Congress was told to expect. Less than 1%. That burdened taxpayers with an additional $2 billion in national debt. Why? Well, because the Arctic is one of the most expensive places on Earth to drill, and investors and the oil industry know this. In fact, BP and Shell already abandoned their Arctic proposals, even paying to exit those leases, and financing has dried up completely, with nearly every major U.S. bank and 20 global insurance companies having publicly pledged not to finance Arctic drilling projects, yet here we are. The coastal plain is too remote, too costly and too risky to make drilling financially feasible, especially when we already produce record oil and gas volumes elsewhere at a far lower cost to taxpayers, including in my district, the Permian Basin. And let's be clear, Arctic drilling will not lower gas prices. With no existing roads, pipelines, or infrastructure, any Arctic oil would take years to reach the market if it ever does. I know this myself because this is a picture from when I was in the Arctic. Now, this is also a question of what we value. The Arctic Refuge is the only national wildlife refuge that protects a complete Arctic ecosystem. It's called the crown jewel of our public lands, and that it's called that for a reason. And I saw why firsthand when I was there last summer. Now, this special place offers unmatched, truly wild fishing and hunting opportunities for all Americans. When you catch your first Arctic char in the Canning River on the coastal plain, it is a moment you will never forget as an American. And these lands have provided sustenance to the Gwich'in and the Inupiat peoples for millennia. The bottom line, setting the unique wildlife and recreation values of America's Arctic aside, using the CRA to overturn land management plans is bad policy, bad economics, and bad land management. And truly, it's a disrespect to the constituents who showed up to those meetings to create that RMP in the first place year over year over year. So by treating every resource management plan as a rule that is subject to the CRA, Congress is throwing the legal status of every oil and gas lease, every grazing permit, and recreational activity across the West into question. And I ask my Republican colleagues, why pursue the CRA process when this administration has already revised the plan in question? They've already opened up the coastal plain, so why do this? We should vote no, not to score a political point, but because this proposal simply doesn't make sense and won't work. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Gentleman from California reserves, the gentleman from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's been mentioned that U.S. coal is dying. U.S. coal is being murdered. There's been an attack on it for many years, and some people will not stop until they see it gone, but it's to our own demise because we depend so much on the energy. We need more nuclear power, we need more hydropower, we need all kinds of new power, and this isn't the time to be attacking our fuel sources. And you know, we'll have a debate on the Arctic slope and the coastal plain, but when we're talking about Wyoming, we're talking about coal, and we're talking about really the backbone of our electrical generating and distribution system. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, who's the subcommittee chairman on energy and minerals for the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Stauber.
Gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of this CRA resolution introduced by my good friend and colleague from Wyoming, Representative Hagman. This resolution overturns the Biden administration's actions to lock up public lands in Wyoming from responsible coal development, all part of the Democrat and President Biden's agenda, which was anywhere but America, any worker but American energy agenda. Last year, I had the opportunity to join Representative Hagman on a tour across the Powder River Basin, where we visited the coal mines and met the proud men and women who have been working there for generations. While I visited one of these mines, I met a union electrician, third-generation miner, who raised his hand and stated, "Please don't take our jobs away. I'm working here, and my son just got hired here." The passion he had for the industry and these jobs were incredible. He and now his children work in that coal mine. That gentleman told me his family story with a lump in his throat. Like generations before him, he and now his children had access to good-paying union jobs in the coal mine across the Powder River Basin. But thanks to the Biden administration's continued war on coal, his job and his livelihood was on the line, as the mine he worked in was set to run out of coal reserves in just a few short years. Thanks to the Biden administration's resource management plan that blocked new coal leasing, the mine wouldn't be able to access additional reserves and would have to close. In doing so, the mine would have to lay off hundreds of workers and devastate the surrounding communities that depend on the coal mining industry to drive their local economies. With tears in their eyes, this electrician asked me to save his job and save his livelihood so he could continue to provide for his family and energy for America. Mr. Speaker, we have the opportunity today to do just that. By voting in favor of this CRA, we will be able to roll back the disastrous Biden administration's anti-American energy policies and keep the Powder River Basin alive. And through the CRA, we will stop future anti-American energy administrations from taking similar steps to shut down the Powder River Basin. I want to thank my colleague from Wyoming for introducing this important CRA resolution on behalf of the hardworking men and women that make up Wyoming's coal industry. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting for this resolution, and I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests for time. I'm prepared to close and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Arkansas is prepared to close and reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's a little bit rich to hear all of this concern about jobs and the poor electrician who's going to lose a job, and to hear all of this concern about the energy that we desperately need to meet projected demand increase. What we're really hearing across the aisle is a very selective concern about some jobs and about some types of energy, because as we're having this debate about a desperate scheme to try to prop up the dying coal industry, not just with this CRA, but with the discounted royalties, with the massive public land giveaways, with all of the other favors that have been doled out to this industry. At the same time, the Trump administration is trying in every way it can to kill off the clean energy industry, which generates far more jobs than coal. Far more people stand to lose their jobs. Far more electricians, like the one my friend was just so concerned about a moment ago, stand to lose their jobs because of this war on clean energy that my friends across the aisle are just fine with. Now, Chairman Westerman said we need all types of new energy. Well, you know, I guess we'll have a chance this week to find out if that too is just more happy talk, more hollow words, because there'll be a markup on his legislation on permitting, and Democrats have been asking for meaningful changes to this war on clean energy as the first item to have a serious negotiation and discussion about that. We'll find out, and I hope that Mr. Westerman delivers on his promise to work in good faith with Democrats and to do something about the war on clean energy. But unless and until